Okay, so here I am with the calculator now. We're doing problem 13 on page 130. It says make a scatter plot of the data. So the way you do that on the calculator is you press the stat button there and you get your menu across the top, and we want to edit, and you just press enter and you'll see you get list 1, list 2, list 3, and if you go to the right with the arrow you can see list 4 and list 5. And so when the lists are empty, they just look like this, and if I click 1 over L5, I can type in a number like 89 and then just press enter and the numbers are there. Okay, so what I've done is I've entered all of the data for that problem, and you can see this L1 is the body mass of the animal, L2 then is the second column, it's the lung volume, and L3 is the maximum oxygen use right there. And so they say make a scatter plot, and the way you do that is you go to y equals, and we're going to turn on plot 1. Okay, now by turning on plot 1, going up here like this, pressing enter, I can go down arrow and see that plot 1 is turned on, but I don't know what's exactly happening there. So the way I see that is by going up here to stat plot right above the y equals. So I do second and y equals, and I get the different plots, and you can see that plot 1 is set up to be a box and whisker plot. So I want to change that, so I just simply hit enter and I go into plot 1 and I want to turn it on, so I press enter, but then I want to use the arrows to select the type of plot, and a scatter plot is that first one, whereas you can see this is the one, the box and whisker, that's selected. So I can arrow around and choose what I want, and there it is at scatter plot, so I hit enter, and now I get L1 and L2 appearing, whereas before the scatter plot was just for list 1, for just numbers. And I can plot a little square, a cross, or a point, and I'll plot that square, so that's good. I'll hit enter, and now I'm good to go. So if I do zoom and then go down to 9, you can see that that's zoom stat, and I press number 9 and there is my plot. Okay, now these lines are thick because if I go to my window, I can see what the calculator has chosen my best window to be, but the calculator is not smart enough to choose a scale that is anything other than thin. So if it's going from -23 to 260, if I have markers about every 50 units, that's good. And then if I go down here and make my scale here, if it's going from -1000 up to 12,000, I can go about every 1,000. You can set them equal to 0. You can enjoy having them thick if you want, but if I go to the graph now, here you can see the little tick marks are a little bit more meaningful. Okay, so there's my data, and what it says in part B, 13b, it says draw a fitted line through the points of your graph. The best line to go through those points can be found very easily with our calculator by going to stat again and choosing calculate. Alright, that's different than the calculate found above trace. I press over arrow 1, I choose enter, and whoops, I made a mistake there. I go back to stat, I go to calc, and I actually choose the menu that I want here, and it's the linear regression. Or I could do the median line, but we'll learn about that later. Okay, so I choose number 4 for linear regression, and you know what? I'm nervous that it's going to mess up here because I'm putting it into that. So I'm going to clear out of that. I'm going to go through the whole thing one more time. I'm going to quit out, and then I'm going to do stat. Final time's a charm. Go over to calc, choose number 4 with a clean screen. I'm going to hit enter, and there is my equation, y equals mx plus b. They just use a because it's European style and they like it. Whereas a is the slope, it's 51, and b, the intercept, is 463. Okay, now that's not all. We can patch that equation into the calculator equation editor by following these 5 steps. Alright, so I go to y equals, you might want to write this down, then I press vars key, variables, and then I go to statistics because I'm doing stat stuff here, so I press 5, and then I go over to equation because I'm entering it into the equation editor, and you see the reg equation shows up, and I hit enter, and there it is. And if I press graph, there is my best line. That line comes the closest to all those data points. Alright, so that's what they mean by drawing a fitted line. It says in part C, use your fitted line to write a rule for the lung volume as a function of the body mass, that's just going to be that equation right there, like 51x plus 463. Okay, that's your rule, that's your equation. Then it says repeats part A and B for the second two columns. So if I go to y equals, if I go to plot 2, I want to turn off plot 1. And so I go up there and turn off plot 1, and then go over to plot 2, turn that on, and I want to see what plot 2 does, so I do second stat plot, and I go down here and see it's a scatter plot. See that icon? And it's using list 2 and list 3. Well, as I showed you before, that's the correct columns. So I just make sure plot 2 is on, and it is, and then I do zoom 9, and that will plot that second set of data. That's the middle column and the end column right here. If I go back to it, it's plotting this data now in the x's and then that data in the y's, and I get a second graph. Okay, and then I can do linear regression of this as well. So we did that by doing stat calc number 4, hit enter, and there's my second line right there, 51 and 463. Okay, and by taking these two equations, I then have f of x and g of x, or the book tells us to write one as u of v and then v of m, and to make composite functions in parts E, F, and G. So I'll let you read through that. You do not need to do this, but you need to read through it and know how to do this on the calculator. And by this I mean do a stat plot and do a linear regression, and then paste it into y equals. Okay, so know how to do that. Thanks a lot.